Welcome to ScoreCraft, Azuremyst Isle. Alone, silent for untold eons, only the rustling of ocean winds in the grasses and the lapping of waves upon the shore. Azuremyst Isle was perhaps the only peaceful sanctuary left on Azeroth, blissfully unaware of the wider world and its sorrows. It stood in a timeless stupor, unmoved by the strife of wars and unknown to those that fought. Despite this, there was life on the island. Much of it, in fact, but these were lives lived in quiet solitude. An island on the edge of the world. One quite quickly notices the ancient elven ruins strewn across the beaches, which now play home to the Naga, twisted forms of the elves that once called these fallen havens home. Soon, too, one sees the enigmatic wildlife. Great, majestic stags, does and fawns, whose fur shimmers in Azuremyst's perpetual moonlight, as though they were the messengers of Elune herself. Like soft drums in the distance, the giant moths of Azuremyst beat their great wings, scattering their shimmering dust and leaving a glistening trail in their wake. For an island of such tranquil beauty, one might not expect furbolgs to have been the chief residents, but any who've come to know this mysterious and oft misunderstood race would see that truly the furbolg are the natural caretakers of this land. Fierce and savage, yet deep in their reverence of nature, and their observance of their shamanistic rituals. They embody the spirit of Azuremyst, an isolated, wild place left to its own ways, finding balance in the cycles of life and death that all worshippers of nature revere. How then has this place reacted to the unbeckoned, unbidden, and unceremonious arrival of the Draenei? The impact of the Exodar was a tumultuous event, worsened by the corruptive effects of strewn fuel gems leaking their magical energies and corrupting both the earth and the rivers. Awful though this was, the tragedy was quickly addressed. With survivors of the crash still being brought in for triage, the Draenei wasted no time in dispatching their shamans, with young adventurers in tow, to mend whatever damage they had inflicted. Few peoples would react this way. Few value the primacy of nature, balance, and virtuous action like the Draenei. These embattled wanderers, forever exiled from their homes, are an unlikely, yet perfect match for the island of Azuremyst. It's almost as though this island had been waiting for them all along, a safe refuge nestled on the edge of a world deep in the inky blackness of the great dark beyond. Somehow, after eons of flight, Velen's people crash-landed onto a place they could finally call their own, with none to dispute it. The first notes to grace our ears in Azuremyst are a lugubrious and enchanting melody from a tribal flute. Instantly recognizable as alien to the sound world of the rest of Azeroth, this foreign instrument takes center stage in the music of Azuremyst, alongside the plucking of a harp, and reflects the enigmatic duality of the Draenei. A people of undeniable and unmatched technological prowess, with intellect enough to see them pilot their way across galaxies, and even inspire the dark titan Sargeras to recruit them as the leaders of his Burning Crusade. Yet, despite their eons of sophistication, they still cling to their tribal roots. Spiritualism and mysticism lie at the heart of their culture, and this humble flute is a testament to that fact. Its beguiling melodies, both sobbing and writhing in quiet fury, are the collected sagas of the Draenei. Many tomes worth of tragic stories, of roads paved with their people's bones, of the mindless slaughter of Shatrath, and the great bereavement of their exodus from Argus, to name but a few. The intricacies of these stories are reflected in the minute affectations to the quality of the flute's tone. This folk-inspired playing relies upon careful control of the breath, bending the tuning of notes by regulating the speed of air blown down the instrument. Overblowing will bend the note up in pitch, creating a raw and wild sound, and underblowing causes a duller tone just below the full note. This manipulation of pitch gives these melodies a profoundness that can scarcely be found outside of folk music, but the Draenei have long since learned the exquisite beauty to be found in the subtle craftsmanship of an artisan at work. Their mighty starships formed from deftly hewn crystals, their clothing adorned with carved, flickering shards of starlight, and their weapons inlaid with gemstones richly imbued with magic. This ornamentation is another core aspect of the Draenei sound world too, for just as they ornament themselves with jewels, they ornament their melodies with a variety of decorative flourishes. The list of such techniques would be too long to recite here now, as truly the Draenei use every musical tool at their disposal, from turns to appoggiaturas, or accented passing notes, acciaccaturas, which are very swift grace notes, and even more besides. All of this unfathomable complexity is wrapped within the outwardly feral-sounding shaman's flute. As with all elements of Draenei spiritualism, there is far more depth below the surface, invoking in their rituals the spirits of ancestors stretching back into unknowable antiquity. The spirits of epochs past, who remember an Argus before Sargeras' doom fell upon their world, walk amongst the misty azure glades and guide their people's fates. They brought them here, to this secluded haven in a great expanse of sea, not to hide, not to cower in fear, but to plan, to rebuild and gather allies, to forge blades and build their war machine. The time had finally come that the Draenei, the exiled ones, would turn, stand, and bring the fight to their traitorous and demonic kin. Yet, the music of this island is not only the work of the Draenei. Though the woods and streams reverberate with the plaintive melodies of our shaman's flute, there is still much to be observed within the musical texture. Underneath the shaman's solemn contemplation are the sounds of the island itself. Underpinning everything in this soundtrack is a constant bass drone, a settling and reassuring anchor point, solidifying us in a rich, warm C tonality. The bass alternates here between C and A flat, one semitone away from the more traditional bass pattern of alternating 1 and 5, which would be C and G, instead using a slowly oscillating 1 and flat 6. This lends an otherworldliness to the music, as we are deprived of the familiarity and harmonic resolution that a perfect cadence, 5-1, would impart. The bass moves enraptured in a languid dance with our flautist, slowly undulating like the ripples of pure white sand upon these shores. At other points in the soundtrack, the bass drone changes note, for example to B-flat, but always sits as a sturdy anchor binding this music together. Above this, hanging in the air, are sounds near indescribable. They rise up from the burbling brooks and waterways, panned between the ears, such that they surround us in a cloud of calm. Almost like the shaking of rattles or the popping of many bubbles, these phantom, high-pitched, percussive sounds twinkle in our ears and lull us into a dreamlike state. This island seems imbued with a powerful, bewitching enchantment. The plants and animals that sustain themselves on this earth are themselves suffused with this magical quintessence, imparting the azure tint that is the fingerprint of this lonely island. An integral part of this soundtrack is the drumming, heard off in the distance, supporting the main texture of the melody, but remaining at a curious distance, heard among the dance of sounds in the air, but with a sense that they are a part of something wholly different. Curious for the Draenei to seclude their percussionists, you might think. However, this drumming comes from the island's true natives, the Firbolg. These enigmatic tribesmen perform great rituals and ceremonies in honor of their ancestors and the spirits of nature. Great, rapturous drum circles lasting into the dead of night, lit by the campfire in their midst and the moon above. From the inn at Azure Watch, we can even sometimes hear the curious ringing of didgeridoos. distant and carried to us on a gust of wind, but these great hollowed-out tree trunks are blown by the chief and his high shaman, spurring on the drummers and filling their ears with the almost hypnotic, overwhelming sound of the didgeridoo, a rich bass drone that carries with it an uncountable bounty of overtones. Their shamanistic fervour sustains the natural beauty and vigour of the island through a raw, unrefined and powerful connection to the elements, a perfect complement to the deliberate and painstaking approach of the Draenei. Together, these new but trusting neighbours tend to all ills on the islands of Azuremyst, cleansing what corruption they can and tirelessly working to achieve balance for all life under their stewardship. So it was that this unassuming rock became an unexpected home, a haven for travellers at journey's end, weary beyond words and yet undiminished in their spirit. For the fire of Argus yet burns in the hearts of Velen's faithful. It is a fire of warmth that has filled this land with its tender and loving embrace, but it is a righteous fury that cannot be abated. Here, among the star-touched thickets, the army of the light will be begun, reforged in holy flame and gathered together under one glorious banner. It is a curious fate to have found themselves a home on Azeroth, this safe refuge in a sea of stars beset by the forces of darkness. Here they can endure, and here they will rebuild. There is truth to that old saying then. Not all who wander are lost. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, subscribe and share it with any friends you think would like it too. If you'd like to support the channel, you can find links to my Patreon and PayPal in the description below. These videos take a lot of hard work and time to make, but one day I hope to be able to do this full time and explore with you the great music games have brought to the world. Until then, I'll see you in the next one. Stay chim.